What's up, guys? Ming the Merciless here. A little bit under the weather. Still making some videos for PokerVIP.com, and today we're playing the GlobalPoker 9-handed tables. We might end up a little bit short on one or the other. We'll just kind of see how that goes. We've got a guy raising it up here in our big blind. We're going to go ahead and 3-bet our King-Queen offsuit. Mostly we're going to 3-bet this combination. You might decide to flat on occasion, but when it's blind versus blind, you really do have the best hand a very high percentage of the time, so you might as well push that edge a little bit. And a Queen 3-5 flop is a relatively dry board texture. We're just going to bet 80 cents into $2. Nothing big is necessary in this spot. He folds, which is going to be a very common result, but nonetheless, we'll try to get that value bet in. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of mix it up. We're usually doing the 6-max videos and show you guys a little something on the full ring. I know some people out there playing some live cash games, that sort of thing, playing some 9-max on a site like Global. Here we've got a relatively connected board texture, but we also have 4 high, so we are going to just go ahead and continuation bet. We do have a backdoor flush draw and straight draw, so we get a little bit of barreling equity, even though not a lot's going to happen. This 7 on the turn is a bad card. It's going to connect with hands like Jack-9, 10-7, and any of that shit, really. 7-9 makes a pair. We don't pick up any equity. He didn't fold the flop, and basically we're just done here. We could try to bluff him on this river against... Basically, we trying to bluff him off of like a 5 or an 8. We're just going to give up. Sometimes you're not going to win the pot, and we're just going to give up here. And we probably could have bluffed him off of that hand. We see that he did not 3-bet ace-king pre-flop, so we'll make a note that he's a little bit on the passive side. And, yeah, you know, if we had picked up a club on the turn, there's a pretty good chance we would have been able to barrel there successfully. But, yeah, and, you know, of course, you don't have to play super loose. You could also fold your 2-4 suited pre-flop, but suited combination, pretty fair to just raise it up, try to run your opponent over, see if he's capable of defending himself. Most of the time he's not. Things can be good in your favor if they're not, because they don't defend, and then you make money, they fold, etc., etc. But in this case, that's not what happened. Yeah, the dynamics are a little bit different in the 9-max games, but that doesn't mean that the games can't be good. I used to just hate the 9-max games. I used to never in a million years be playing the damn 9-max game with full ring. That means that there's 3 nits at the table that we don't need there. But in this day and age, you know, a lot of players are playing both tournaments and cash games and live as well as online. So it makes a lot of sense to have a little bit of practice in all the formats. We've got the old Queen Deuce offsuit. And the other thing that's unique about the 9-handed games is that you get a lot more multi-way pots, because you have more players at the table. More players are going to enter the pot once a couple have entered the pot. So that means that you have to be a little bit more versed in the multiplayer dynamics. And in an age of solvers everywhere, you know, everybody and their brothers just PO solvering it up. They all know exactly what to do every time in a heads-up scenario in a 6-max cash game. It's not a bad idea to get into a format where players are not as well versed or might not have as much, you know, experience with the format of the game. So having all these multi-way pots, if you can start focusing on them, getting really good at the dynamics of multi-way pots, when to lead, when not to, how it changes ranges, what you should be doing, you know, that's a pretty good opportunity for you to kind of get an edge against the other players that are in your games, players who might be of similar skill level. So that's kind of all of these reasons are why we're just playing a little bit of full ring for you guys today. And as you can see, we'll kind of just comment, since I will be playing likely less hands given the positions and the frequency, we're just going to comment on what's actually happening at the table from the other players' perspectives from this point, because I didn't see what happened over here on table 1. But we do have Brennan now checking after the villain, or at least he has an option. I think he was the one that raised pre-flop. Looks like he's going to take more time with his decision. He bets half pot. 8-6-5 rainbow is a relatively dry board. We have the 10 of diamonds in our hands. So we're blocking some of the backdoors that might be betting there, like a king-jack or a king-10 of diamonds type of combo. He gets called by Vanek with a very short stack, so I would assume that this is not going to be too many 5x combos. They both get a committing check raise. So now they're going to just play relatively straightforward. We are going to raise it up isolation style with our ace-6 of hearts on the button. And now we are heads up. But I would assume all of the money goes in on the turn, and they both have some sort of ace-x or better. I'd assume Brennan has ace-x or better. And I would assume that the villain probably has 2 pair set, but he might have as little as like ace-jack, something like that. Looks like we're just going to win that pot, which is pretty fair for us. We're going to fold our ace-5 in the cutoff. It looks like they have ace-queen and ace-7, so relatively similar. We get the kind of the bottom of the villain's range, and the other guy just kind of gets roasted with his top pair. You know, there's a pretty fair way to look at this scenario. If you think about it, what would the bottom of the villain's range be for check raising? And generally, your opponents are capable of having 2 pairs and sets in their value range, whichever ones are available to them based on their pre-flop play. And they also can expand, you can also expand their value range to whatever 1 pairs make sense for them to check raise. And that's why I said the bottom of his range might be ace-jack. Because if a player is check raising top pair, they're generally doing so with a good kicker. So maybe they were passive pre-flop and they didn't 3-bet a hand like ace-king or ace-queen. Or maybe they just really like ace-jack, ace-queen, and they check raise those, and, you know, they standardly flat them, whatever. So, you know, for the most case, you can say that my opponent's probably going to be, you know, anything that's like a straight, 2-pair, a set, all of those are very strong hands, so they're generally going to be in check raise ranges. And then what 1-pair hands your opponent check raises are going to vary player to player. Some players will never check raise them. Some players will check raise too many of them. It all kind of depends on the individual. And then the next thing you're looking at is bluffs. And on a 5-6 ace board, what bluffs are out there? Well, you have backdoor flush draws, and then you have straight draws. So what straight draws are going to be out there check raising? I mean, 7-8 is an open-ended straight draw, so that's a big one. And that's why we don't really like having the 7 kicker from a game theory perspective, because when your opponent check raises you there and you're Brennan 15 and you have the ace, you're saying, well, I'm only beating bluffs here because against a value hand, I have 3 or less outs. Because if my opponent has a set of 5s or 6s, my 7 is not good. I'm going to have to make a running boat. So what is his bluffs going to be over there? And he's going to have some straight draws that a lot of them include a 7. You know, 3 7 suited on that board. No, I got a 7 in my hand. Cuts that down. 7-8. I'm cutting that down with my 7. You know, 7-9. I mean, I'm not blocking 8-9, but is he really taking a spot where a guy has flatted a pretty big percentage of his stack and now he's check raising, assuming there's fold equity? I mean, that's a variable that we haven't even talked about yet, is that when you have another player in there and they look relatively committed to the hand, there's a pretty good chance that the bluffing frequency of your opponents goes way down, and it's strictly going to be value combos, and you have to think about how your hand interacts with their value combos. But, you know, just for a complete overall thought process, if you look at the value combos versus bluffs in that spot, a 7 is a bad kicker to have. We'd rather have a deuce even than a 7, because a deuce is not blocking any, well, I mean, I guess you're blocking 2-3 and 2-4 technically, but essentially when you're bluff catching, you want to pick combos that do not block your opponent's bluffs, because that's the only part of their range that you're ahead of. So that is why a 7 is a particularly bad kicker to have. And as you can see, like we discussed, you get a lot of multi-way pots. So we raise it up early position with our queen jack of diamonds. We're going to have a tighter range for raising an early position in general. And we get called by a bunch of people behind, and we have a paired board. And the first thing you'll know is that this hand kind of sucks. And even if our hand was pocket queens, it would not be that great of a scenario, because there's a very good chance someone has a 5 here, occasionally pocket 3s. We're just going to go ahead and get out of the way and then see what happens on the later streets. That's not to say that you're never going to bet your queens there, because since players' ranges can be so wide, you aren't always going to see a 5, but obviously when you're in a 6-way pot, there's a pretty damn good chance that someone is going to have you outdrawn in that scenario. So you have to be very willing to fold hands that don't play well across turns or rivers. You have to be very willing to fold hands that don't have a lot of ways to beat the combos that are on the board. I mean, you know, blockers, bluffs. I mean, you're looking for a reason to continue with those types of combos, and a lot of the times you just don't have enough. And here you can see our opponents had pocket 9s and pocket kings. So you see that pocket kings didn't even 3-bet pre-flop, which is a pretty strange occurrence. Honestly, you would kind of expect pocket kings. The pocket 9s is relatively standard flat, but the pocket kings, you would expect to see that be 3-bet. We're going to go ahead and check in the big blind here. And again, you're in a 5-way pot. We have no kicker. We're just going to check our jack here. Although it is a spot where you could you could decide to lead out. I do use an aggressive leading strategy when I'm playing in these scenarios, but here we're just going to fold because we have an under the gun limper. Or is that a button? No, he's okay. So no, we have an earlier position limper. I thought this guy next to me was under the gun for a second, but clearly Bubbles has the button. But we're not going to play very well across turns and rivers, which means we're beat by a 5, we're beat by a jack, we're not going to want to see a club. Our hand doesn't have a way to improve unless we hit another jack. There's only 2 in the deck. You know, it's a nightmare scenario for us to get to showdown, and we kind of have too many players in the pot. So if there were less players in the pot, I would use a leading strategy. A lot of the time, I just lead out with my top pair and then go from there. You know, if you get raised, you're going to, you make some calls, make some folds. And if you just get called, then you're going to just play well on turns and rivers, depending on all the other variables. What's the turn card? What do I know about my opponents? But yeah, for the most part, and this guy leads out into everyone. But again, if there were fewer players in the pot, we would definitely continue. And if we have a club, like, you know, I'm going to have a checking range and a betting range. And let's say we're 3-handed and I have jack with a remedial kicker, like jack 6, and I have the 6 of clubs. I'm more likely to check that combo and call because it plays a little better across turns and rivers than if I just have jack with the 6 of hearts. So if I don't have a backdoor flush draw, I'm more likely to bet that hand because it needs more protection. Although there are going to be some lineups where I just bet both of them or just check both of them. But if you're going to bet one versus the other, checking the one that plays a little bit better across turns and rivers, we sort of have that right here. We have the 6, which is third pair, with the ace of clubs. So checking and calling with this one, a little bit better than leading it out, especially on a connected board like this where a lot of players are going to be able to call multiple streets, or they're just going to have a better hand good bit of the time. We're going to go ahead and raise our suited 8-3 here, which is, you know, and against the 70-cent raise, we're just going to go ahead and fold the ace of clubs and the 6. Not really much to say about it. Now, this guy is a little bit on the short side, and there's, you know, there's only 10 cents there. So from a theory perspective, you should play a little bit tighter because there's less money to win, and there's still rake and all that. But at the end of the day, I have an 8 and a 3 of diamonds, and we's coming for them chips. But in general, no. If that was a tough player, I mean, I wouldn't really be raising the 8-3 there for the most part. We're going to go ahead and isolate with our 6-7 of diamonds on the button. And as you can see, we are going to get ourselves in another multi-way pot situation as we have a bunch of callers. I'm assuming Gen is not going to fold once everybody else is in there. And now we are going to just check in this spot. A lot of 10s, a lot of kings, a lot of straight draws, a lot of queen jacks, a lot of queen 9s. We do have a 3-card straight flush draw, so heads up, I would be betting this combo. And in position 3-way, I would be betting this combo. But in this scenario, we're just going to end up folding multi-way, and that guy's leading half pot into everyone. We're just going to kind of get out of his way. We're going to raise it up with 5-6 in late position. Definitely going to be folding this in an earlier position for the most part. We get called by the big blind, and we have exactly that type of a board texture here where we're heads up. You know, this is a weird spot. I'm going to go ahead and call. I'm getting a very, very good price. We have a backdoor straight flush draw, and a lot of the time his bet is going to mean that he has an 8 or a jack and a 3 as well. And now we have not much going on, but he bet 10 cents again, so I'm going to call with our 5 just because we're beating 3x, and if he does some other weird shit, I think mostly he just ends up having an 8, a jack at this point. There's not much else to say. He doesn't really ever have a flush. I could probably go all in here, but just for the sake of getting a good price, we're going to see exactly how wide his range is and just assume we don't really have the best hand that much. As you can see, his bet sizing expands down to straight draws with no heart on that board. That is something that you'll want to make a note of. And that is another reason why we're just going to call the river. And as you can see, I could have shoved, and that portion of his range certainly would have folded, or been the sickest value bet of all time. For the most part, I would assume that I'm beat there by a jack or an 8. A jack probably sizes up somewhere. An 8 or a 3 probably just bet all on the min strat. So it's hard to say. It's hard to say exactly. But clearly in this situation, our opponent is capable of having a straight draw. Ends up being a pretty good spot for us to call down. So we have a check on the queen 3-7 rainbow. Now we have a 7 and a 3 in our hands, so we're blocking the sets and the second pairs pretty well. The villain is making a quarter pot bet, and looks like everybody might fold. Vanek says no sir, no sir. 4-5 does get there, 6-7 does get there. 6-3 does get there. See if he increases his bet size here. After betting a quarter pot in position, he now increases to half pot. What kind of hands would Vanek call the flop with for that amount? I mean, it could be as little as ace high, which would be perfectly reasonable, and folding to the double barrel. Now here we have ace jack against an early position limper, and in a 6-max cash game, you're definitely going to play this all the time. But in this situation, we're just going to end up folding. Actually, is this guy, he's waiting. So how many do we have here? 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, we'll go ahead and raise. Oop, never mind. I was going to go ahead and raise there because we're 7-handed with Mac waiting. But that's one of the things that you'll make an adjustment with in the full ring games, is that you're going to play a bit tighter with your worst aces. So you're still going to be raising your suited aces a lot of the time. You're not always raising all of your middling suited aces because they lack a lot of playability. And I think playability is very big in, well, I mean, it's just big in general, but especially when you're in an earlier position, playability is important because you're going to be in more multi-way pots. You're often going to be out of position. So having hands that make straights and flushes and nutted ones that cooler other players is a very important thing to do. And that's often why you're not playing your small pocket pairs in earlier positions as well, because they get coolered more frequently. They're equity locked in a sense that they flop a set, or they flop, check fold type scenario most of the time. So it's, for the most part, you play tight in earlier position. It's kind of the bottom line. We're going to isolate with ace queen of diamonds, folding king deuce offsuit. But yeah, I would have raised there just because we have the player sitting out and a player not at the table. All right. We've got the ace queen of diamonds. We got fuck it one over in the small blind. See what he's going to do. What's he saying over there? What's he going to do? What's he saying over there? What's he going to do? See if we're back to Jen, if she'd like to play a little hand with us. And this is a relatively dry board texture. Betting and checking are both reasonable here. We're just going to start by using a betting strategy and see how much fold equity we have against her. The more fold equity we have, the more we'll just continue betting. And the more we lack fold equity, we're just going to take our better ace highs and check them back. And we're calling a min-raise here with our 2 hearts. This hand lacks playability from a straight draw perspective, but it certainly does have flush draw perspective. We're just going to fold on the 3-3-7 rainbow board, though. Not much going on there, really. And this is going to be a 3-bet combination. We're just going to make it 90 cents over the top of his min-raise on the button. One of the rare spots where we're at a full ring game. We get a chance to 3-bet blind versus blind. We do block queen 10. Pretty good blockers here for the most part. We're going to make a small continuation bet. Basically just trying to get him fold small pocket pairs. And once we turn the open-ended straight draw and we have relatively good blockers to him having a queen, we are going to go ahead and double barrel here and try to get him to fold a jack X or a king high float. And I think with the 10 of clubs in our hand, we are just going to go ahead and barrel off. Although I will tell you guys it is a little bit dangerous with him only having 276 here. So don't be surprised if we get called at a relatively high frequency. And he ends up having pocket kings and slow playing. So I would assume that he's never going to fold pocket kings. When he shows up with pocket kings there, that's a hand that we can just, don't expect that to fold. That's definitely a good, it's good that we didn't hit our straight on one side. We was going to lose either way on that one. But we had a pretty good amount of equity in that scenario, and I don't mind the triple off on that exact run out. Turn it open in a straight draw and river the blocker to the flush. Having blockers some queen X anyway. like I said, the only thing there that was going against us is that he basically had, a small amount of chips left on the turn. But that's also why that your opponent will end up having more folds in that spot, is because most of their strong hands, in most cases, end up shoving on the turn. So I still think that even though it looks kind of messy, you still get enough folds in those spots. And we have a relatively wide number of value combos to create bluffs from a balance perspective. And we don't actually have any history with this guy to know that he slow plays kings or anything weird like that. So if we have ace queen, that is going to be 8 combinations. Basically, we have 8 combinations of every offsuit queen that we have. So we have king queen and ace queen. That's 16. Then we have queen jack suited. So at least one combination of queen jack suited. And then pocket jacks is 3. We're probably going to have queen jack offsuit there as well. So I mean, we're going to get a lot of combos to have bluffs that we're going to need to create bluffs for. And our best bluffs on that run out are going to be bluffs that block flushes and that block queens, because those are going to be the hands that we are going to get called by. And I think that takes a little bit more precedent than blocking his Jack X combos, because those are going to be his folding combos. But at the same time, you're going to get a little bit of overlap there since they're all Broadway cards. This is a pretty dicey board. We're just going to call a shove if Palermo has it, just because if he has a flush or a straight, we can still make a boat. And we end up taking it down either way. But yeah, so I don't think we're over bluffing with that combo. We're blocking him from having ace queen and queen 10, even though we do block some of his folding jacks. His folding jacks, depending, I mean, who knows exactly how wide his range is with his folding jacks. Yeah, for the most part, we're all right. Didn't work out this time. And if you want to be a perfectionist about it, you could also make a slightly smaller bet on the turn, so you have a bigger pot to stack ratio on the river to maybe get a little bit more fold equity. But you guys would be surprised how often somebody ends up folding after calling the turn with that much left. So that's, it definitely looks messy, but I'm not unhappy with the play. And again, when you see a guy flat with kings like that, you want to make a note of it. This guy is a tricky, trappy, slow play type of a dude, and perhaps you can clip off some of your bluffing combos if he likes to slow play a lot. We'll just have more give-ups in our range. And we are going to definitely raise Jack 8 offsuit on the button. We get called by Mac 777 in the small blind. And we have the Jack of diamonds, a blocker to ace jack, blocker to sets and 2 pairs, and our hand could certainly use some protection in a 3-way pot. So we're going to use a relatively large bet size given the drawy nature of the board. And we're going to fold our king deuce offsuit on table 2. See what off Foster 22 has to say. He finds the fold, and on we go. But yeah, as always, don't feel bad when a play doesn't work. Your bluffs are not going to work 100% of the time, and they shouldn't. So never be concerned when the result is a negative one. Make sure that you are bankrolled well. Make sure that you're managing your mental game well. There's a lot of resources out there for these things these days. It's almost more important to manage yourself well and maintain a strong mental game than it is to be good at poker. A marginal winner who put in more hours and managed his mental game well and didn't tilt as much as a very good player who would not do these things, going on tilt a bunch, and he would just make more money. Out hustling, out working, whatever you want to call it. Got to manage that mental game. But yeah, the results are irrelevant in the short term. And of course, you got to be honest with yourself. If you find something that you didn't do right or you could have done better, then learn from that. every single mistake that you make is an opportunity to learn, an opportunity. It's eternity. We're going to raise it up with the king jack, a little bit on the light side. But that's okay. Table seems to be playing slightly tight for a full ring table. It's slightly surprising. We've had a couple of multi-way pots, but nothing too crazy. But yeah, the games here on GlobalPoker are good. The software is relatively clean. The browser multi-tabling is a little bit weird, but for the most part, it works, you know? I think you can turn the avatars off if you want. So if you don't like looking at all these weirdo avatars, then you can turn these off. But you know me. I mean, I want to be rocking the Grim Reaper no matter how you look at it. That might as well have been a custom avatar for me. We're going to fold the 8-6 of diamonds. Fold that 3-4 offsuit in the early position. And their tournaments are getting a little bit juicier than they have been in the past. You know, Global's putting a lot of support into their tournaments. They've got like a 5K. There's like a 5K guaranteed for $5 or something like that. I mean, that's pretty spicy. You can't really complain about that. 5K for $5. See what tournaments they got today to kind of give you guys an idea. We're going to fold the 4-6 suited in early position. Like today they have an 8K guaranteed for $33 with 2 rebuys and an add-on. I like that format as well. I like the, you know, the not the re-entry, but the rebuy, because a rebuy doesn't cost you rake, and that's a lot of the way that these sites are basically scamming players into paying more rake these days and cutting down ROIs like weak forests, is that they're charging you the same amount of rake to re-enter. That's trash, man. That's trash. So when you get the rebuy, that's not bad at all. Rebuy and an add-on. So that's a pretty sweet format. For those of you who like PLO, they got the daily PLO, $750 guaranteed. Rebuy, 6 max, $5. Can't beat that. You get a $3,000 $50 tournament, which I'm not really sure the strategy behind that one. $50 for 3K. Can't be a lot of players playing in that one. What else? There was the 5K, the daily 5K. It's usually in the evening. Oh, it's running right now. It started at 5 p.m. That's why it's not in the list. It literally just started. Daily 5K guaranteed rebuy for $5 at 5 p.m. That's awesome. That's a pretty damn nice tournament right there. So if nothing else, you guys should get into that one. We are going to fold the 4-8 offsuit. We're going to be folding the 6-9 offsuit. Then I'm going to go ahead and pause here, and I'll be back with part 2. Playing a little bit of full ring here for you guys. Hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in a second.